This is Lex Luthor's communications hub where he fought Superman?
Yeah. This was my bay. We got juice in here.
We're plugged in and ready to go.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Charlie. This will be my full Peacemaker Season 2, Episode 7 video. It was as crazy as you would expect. There are so many Easter eggs, WTF moments, so we'll break them all down. If you're brand new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to get all the episodes. We've kind of gotten to the point at Peacemaker where we all expect it to be super crazy. The question is how they're going to top the craziness of the previous episodes. Pretty much everybody was just expecting to see the worst of the worst in this episode because of last week's Nazi Earth reveal, but there were a couple surprises, especially with Augie's character, who actually sounded like a pretty reasonable guy given the circumstances, like less of a Nazi than you would expect, way nicer, in fact, than DCEU Augie. But the actual episode was like a Keith in the Night, a play on the phrase like a thief in the night, and in the context of the episode, a reference to what Judo Master was saying, night has fallen, and them trying to sneak back through the dimensional doorway. And even though they did make it through the doorway at the end and closed it, it is not the end of Nazi Earth because Keith is alive at the end of the episode and seeking revenge eventually, or it's implied he's seeking revenge, and Argus now is trying to explore the pocket dimension in all the other 99 universes for nefarious purposes. This also confirms a lot of theories about why Lex Luthor was interested in Peacemaker's pocket dimension. All because it is vastly superior technology to his Luthorcorp tech that they use to open their pocket dimension. But the actual episode starts right after last week's episode with Nazi Harcourt having DCU Harcourt arrested. There's a reference to Mein Kampf being on everyone's desk and her yelling at it, making fun of him for not realizing this was a Nazi version of Earth. I wouldn't be surprised if it's like this on every business on this planet, not just government agencies, where like everybody is forced to keep that book on their desk. There's another joke about him being super dumb and missing the obvious when they see a giant mural of Hitler in front of the American flag in the Capitol building in Washington, D.C., with him finally admitting to being an idiot. Most of the episode is just one WTF moment to the next, but there's a little bit of James Gunn's humor that peeks out through, like he writes in a lot of jokes in these crazy moments. For instance, him breaking up with Harcourt briefly as he's busy wrecking all the Argus guards so they can escape. There were no changes to the intro. This is just like Season 1 where they had the same intro every single episode, but there was a bit of a crazy moment in real life the last couple of days. You probably saw that Fortnite was using the Peacemaker emote from his dance this season, but because he was making the Nazi symbol when he was doing that dance in a sort of foreshadowing moment, sort of like telling you without telling you what the season was going to be. It was under our noses the whole time. They put that in Fortnite, so millions of kids all over the world were using Nazi iconography every single time they were playing the game. So of course Fortnite flipped out, pulled the emote, then changed it and put it back up, so it's like completely different now. But it is kind of funny that Fortnite had millions of kids all over the world doing this for many weeks since the show had started, since they introduced this to the game. My assumption is the reason why that wound up happening in the first place, like why James Gunn didn't tell them, no, that's actually supposed to seem like a Nazi symbol, you don't want that, make him do something else, is probably because he was not on the email chain when Fortnite was like, hey, we want to put Peacemaker in the game. It was probably some other department inside DC and Warner Brothers that had no idea what was actually happening during the Peacemaker season. It's one of those examples of what happens at really giant companies where different departments don't talk to each other. But then the episode picks up with the other vigilante explaining the history of Earth X. It's similar to the comic book backstory in the Arrowverse Crisis on Earth X backstory. Hitler basically won World War II, so it winds up being a man in the high castle kind of scenario.
I didn't create the problems in my world, Missy. I don't agree with them.
In present day, the Sons of Liberty on this Earth are the only resistance to the Nazi government, so anybody who is not for them is with their group. It also kind of sounds like, based on his speech at the end of the episode, that this version of Augie is also a sympathizer to their cause, but he doesn't outright come out and say that he was a member of the Sons of Liberty secretly. I think he maybe just helped them on the side. All because when Keith started talking about chasing Adebayo down, he actually got pretty upset, and he's like, no, that's not right, we don't do things that way. That was also to let you know that even though this is meant to be a Nazi version of Earth, not every single person on this planet is a Nazi. Vigilante also has a joke about the DCU not being a utopia despite the fact America and the Allies winning World War II, like, it's actually kind of bad on our Earth too. The other vigilante explains the camps where they keep all the non-white people, non-straight, basically anybody who doesn't do what Nazis like. Immediately realizing what's going to happen to Adebayo as they rush out to try and save her. That winds up being kind of like a supersized version of the season 1 episode where the Ku Klux Klan comes out of the woods chasing Peacemaker, but it's like every single man, woman, and child on the block here chasing her down into the pool. Love the scene of her getting saved by Judo Master who shocks everybody in the pool. You can even see some Nazi stickers on their Crocs, like that's how crazy it is here. And the joke that this is not his first time shocking people or killing people in pools. Like, he's killed multiple groups of people in pools and done it in multiple ways, including multiple different types of shockings. Makes it sound like he really just likes killing groups of people in pools. Peacemaker then uses his jetpack to help him and Harcourt escape. You remember, this is actually a bit of a callback to Season 1. Season 1, he complained about wanting a jetpack, so on the other Earth when he got one, it was meant to be a really big deal. Like, he got the Peace Cycle, all this really cool gear that was way better than his DCU gear. Keith then comes back to their house, finds Economos tied up, and their father explains everything with the DCU Peacemaker to him, and they start to figure out that he did something to their Peacemaker, but they haven't learned everything about what happened yet. Pretty much all of Economos' scenes in this episode were him just being terrible in this situation, just trying to deal with it and trying to get help from people, like Eagly, most unhelpful Eagle in situations like this. There's a little bit more backstory for Earth X as well, too. We learned that this Augie and this Keith knew all about the Pocket Universe in the library, like he came in through the library, then basically knowing that it had been there for a long time. He actually said that he met the DCU version of Augie years ago inside the Pocket Dimension and thought that he was this dark and twisted mirror of himself. In the world that he came from, the DCU was terrible by comparison to his Nazi world. Part of the joke there is also that if he were a Nazi, of course he would think that non-Nazi worlds were horrible, but later in the episode, the way that he talks about it, he himself is not one of them. If you're not a big comic book reader, there was also a big twist like this in the Absolute comics, which are publishing right now in Absolute Justice League, for example, where they reveal that the Absolute Universe is like a dark, twisted version of the regular DC Universe. Evil reigns, there's this thing like moral gravity, where anybody who tries to rise up against it will get tamped down hard and killed. All of the villains wind up being the ones to form the Justice League because justice in this universe is essentially evil in the normal DC universe. So all the heroes like Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman, The Flash, are viewed as agents of chaos and will probably form their version of the Injustice League. So it's probably a little bit like that inside Nazi Earth. Then the way this Augie explains their multiverse portal, it's a similar situation to the DCU where Argus doesn't know about it and they don't want them to learn about it in the Nazi dimension.
Because if he tells anybody that we have a dimensional portal in our house,
This winds up being why they kill all the police when they go to catch Peacemaker and Harcourt. Like, come with us, don't talk to the police about this, and they don't want the police inside the house learning about what's going on. Then they explain what's been going on with Judo Master while all the craziness was happening, while everybody was figuring out what was going on in this Earth. He actually says his stay so far here has been super peaceful, and he just yoinked an empty house because the owners were away from it, and because it had flaming hot Cheetos, which in this universe, it's a follow-up on the Cheerios joke with the H on the end. He also claims that they don't taste as good as DCU Cheetos, even though technically they're meant to be identical. When he makes the Peacemaker reference, even though he's just making fun of him like he does many times, that's also a reference to his license plate from Season 1. It actually said Peacemaker. They mostly spend this part of the episode just having a heart-to-heart, chilling out, waiting for night to fall so they can go back to the portal dimension, but he remembers the time Adebayo tasered him in Season 1, which she apologizes for, and they sort of make nice with each other. They play their version of Scrabble in this universe, which they call Scrabble, which Adebayo is terrible at and Judo Master apparently is amazing at. When he says Peacemaker is like the next door boy from Toy Story, that was Sid Phillips, who was a little bit like Peacemaker, like his arc is similar to Peacemaker's inside Season 1 and Season 2, who started out as a villain in the Toy Story movie, but then vowed to change his ways by the end of that. Part of the idea here is that Adebayo is trying to explain that Peacemaker has turned a corner, and he's actually a much nicer guy now to Judo Master. Like, she's even come around on his taste in music as well. And even though they brush past it pretty quickly, when Judo Master makes Adebayo realize that the problems she's been having in her relationship this season with her wife are her own, like you are the cause of these problems, not your wife, is actually meant to be a parallel to Peacemaker's realization at the end of the episode, where he realizes, no, it's not my dimension, the DCU, that's wrong, or this dimension that's wrong, it's me. I've been the person that's been broken this whole time. It's all because of my problems. James Gunn actually said, both during Season 1 and Season 2, he actually wrote Adebayo and Peacemaker to be on parallel types of arcs, like they go through similar types of realizations through each season. This is also meant to be one of the reasons why Adebayo says that Peacemaker is her best friend in present day, because they've basically been going through a lot of the same types of things, season to season. Then they both say the quiet part loud. I mean, it's been pretty obvious the last couple of episodes when they come to the conclusion that Nazi world is not that different from the regular DCU world. Back at their house, there's a couple more jokes about Eagly being really bad with English and understanding commands, like he brings Economos a piece of string, showing he doesn't actually understand what he's asking him to do, and then just wants him to open the fridge so we can get more human food. Back in the DCU, we get our next big cameo scene when Rick Flag and Sasha Bordeaux get help from Lex Luthor's lead scientist Sidney Halperstam from the events of the Superman movie, using his technology left over from the events of the Superman movie, which hadn't been destroyed. James Gunn explained his backstory in the DCU is that he used to be an MIT professor who taught Lex Luthor when he was getting his PhD at MIT, and then later when Lex Luthor started his company, Luthorcorp, and wanted to start developing his pocket universe technology, Sidney Halperstam, which is an expert in that field, so we hired him to come work for him and do it here. You also probably recognize him as Stephen Blackheart, who stars in pretty much every one of James Gunn's movies. Like, there are a couple actors who have been in every single one of James Gunn's movies. That is also because he just happens to be really good friends with Stephen in real life. There are a couple moments of exposition here, also setting up next week's finale episode 2. So when he challenges them because he wants time off his sentence, like, why should I help you? And then Rick Flag is like, Lex Luthor said, no questions asked, you would do whatever we say. Do you want me to go back and tell him that you said you wouldn't help? And he gets really afraid. I think the idea here is that he's just so convinced that Lex Luthor will eventually get out and eventually have the opportunity to retaliate against him if he's pissed off by him, so he doesn't want to make Lex Luthor mad, so he'll just do whatever.
You can never keep it open for more than a few minutes without it collecting dimensional detritus and eventually collapsing. But this one, it seems secure.
There's also the idea that Lex Luthor wants to get his hands on Peacemaker's more superior pocket dimension technology. I mean, it's alien technology, but he's the one that has it. That is what all this dialogue about the wobbly Luthorcorp portals are about. Basically explaining that Lex Luthor's version of this technology is inferior, so he wants to get his hands on the better technology that Peacemaker has. Also really important, notice that Sidney Halperstam also says that their Luthorcorp portals in the Superman movie collected dimensional detritus, which is just random material from other dimensions, meaning they might use that for plot in future movies and TV shows, like stuff, important people just leaking into the DCU. Maybe a couple villains breaking into the DCU. Rick Flag then implies that he's going to make Sidney Halperstam work for him at Argus on this technology. I think that's mostly a reference to what's happening in the finale, because they continue to explore the pocket dimension in the finale. Once Augie and Keith save Peacemaker and Harcourt and kill the police, bringing them back to their house, they eventually reveal everything. He killed Reverse Peacemaker, their version of Peacemaker, but it was an accident. So the important part here is that Augie in this dimension is the super chill one. He's super zen about it. And the way he talks about it, he sounds like it was actually a mercy event, and it's actually a good thing that their Peacemaker died, because he was having such a terrible time of it and things were only getting worse. Like, it's probably better that he died. Keith winds up being the one that can't handle it, and he's on the edge here, and I think the idea is that if Augie had not been killed, he hadn't have died, then Keith ultimately would have also let them go back through the portal dimension, and that would have been that. Notice he calls Harcourt Amelia Jr., and we get another big cameo scene from Larry Fitzgibbon from Season 1 on this Nazi version of Earth. There are a lot of people that were wondering about some of those characters from Season 1 that we haven't seen yet, so this is just a nice callback to that moment, even though it's on the other Earth. You also notice at this point that the police still think that Peacemaker is the one that killed all those police, not Augie and Keith. I think this is to explain why Keith is probably able to come back through the portal and try to get revenge on Peacemaker in the finale. Otherwise, the police would have tried to lock him up too, and that wouldn't be possible. Adebayo, Judo Master, and both the Vigilantes show up. DCU Vigilante reminds you that he despises Judo Master because of their fights during Season 1, and there's a bit of a reference to maybe both of the Vigilantes being a little bit gay, at least Earth X Vigilante, but because they're basically meant to be the exact same, I think they're also implying that the DCU Vigilante also might be gay. There's another Pokemon reference, everyone but Adebayo also really excited to kill all the police. I think it's just the three of them really liking to kill people. Like, it doesn't matter who it is, they just like killing. There are a couple more big reveals from Augie before he winds up getting killed off. He reveals that all the police on this world are dirty, like they're far from clean. And a lot of his big rousing, inspirational speech that he goes out on here with the big twist, like they stop him short as he's finishing the inspirational speech. Sounds like a very James Gunn kind of thing to do. Part of the idea is that he's trying to explain how he's not a Nazi, he doesn't agree with anything that's happening on this world, but he's just trying to do his best day to day. Like a lot of people in real life, it's more of a morally gray kind of situation. Peacemaker takes this to heart, and I think it's meant to be a reference to the way that Peacemaker lives his life too. Like, he is an anti-hero, he does a lot of bad things, but he tries to do them for good reasons now. Whereas previously, it wasn't so much. Like at the beginning of the season when he had his funny scene with the Justice Gang and they were grilling him on all the people that he killed, like, well, some of them, it wasn't for such great reasons. Now he's trying to turn a corner and he's trying to do things for the right reasons. So a lot of Augie's speech and the way things go down in such a WTF way are to bring Peacemaker to the realization, as Keith almost dies in front of him again, that he has been the problem this whole time.
I hope that he knows that I did the best that I could, and I left this world a better place.
It also kind of feels like James Gunn wrote Augie this way through this rousing, inspirational speech to go out on to give Robert Patrick some redemption from Season 1 because he made Robert Patrick be so despicable as the DCU Augie during Season 1. Like I said though, he seems so understanding and wanted to keep this off the police's radar so much that had things not gone down so terribly in those final moments, they would have let them go back to the DCU and that would have been that. But of course, big WTF moment stops it all. Everything goes to hell in the worst possible way as Vigilante jumps through the window, stabs the hell out of him. Keith absolutely loses it and starts opening up on all of them as they try to escape to the pocket dimension. Just as Eagly and the others start to take him out, he stops them because he can't stand to watch his brother die in front of him again, and then realizes that he's been the problem this whole time. This is actually a great sequence of events, like great action scene and great drama at the same time. It almost felt like a finale, like they could have ended the season on that cut to black with him in the police car. But you remember, there's a whole other episode next week, so it's only going to get even crazier. As they bail into the pocket dimension back to the DCU, Harcourt tries and fails to kill Keith so that he can't come back for revenge in the future, but she's stopped when the police bust in. So it actually seems like Vigilante in this universe probably either wound up dying or being arrested by the police in this moment here. Keith then gets taken to the hospital. He's very much alive, very much capable of coming back for revenge through the door. So pretty easy to assume that he will be back in the finale, coming into the DCU like the reverse, coming through the pocket dimension to the DCU to kill Peacemaker to get revenge. My early theory there is that Peacemaker will ultimately and tragically be forced to kill his brother again, and it will break him. Probably the bigger question though is, will Keith actually wind up killing any of the 11th Street kids? Like, who is on the chopping block? There were so many people that thought that Economos was going to be killed off in this episode because some of the random posts that the actors were making, like, does this mean that they're going to kill Economos? It would be a little bit weird if everybody survives the finale, so maybe at least like one big death. As they make it back to the DCU at the end of the episode, Argus is waiting for them, captures them, and Peacemaker turns over the Pocket Universe key, using the opportunity to help everyone else get back in Argus's good graces, paying off the letter that he left them a couple episodes ago, saying, turn this key into Rick Flag and use it to try and get your jobs back. Rick Flag isn't meant to be an idiot, so I think that he knows that Peacemaker is doing this on purpose, but he gives them their jobs back because they're working for Argus in the finale trailer. There are a lot of criticisms that you could put against Rick Flag's character this season, the decisions that he makes. Like, he's not doing a lot of very smart things this season, but he's not meant to be an idiot the way that James Gunn explains him. Then they end to the credits with him in the back of the police car on his way back to Belle Reve prison. All remind you of the Suicide Squad movie where they found him in prison. This time they used the post-credit scene for like another funny payoff, even though the end of the episode was so WTF. This time, it's just a longer version of Sidney Happerson's scene after Rick Flag and Sacha Bordeaux have left, with a joke about how he's just going to use all of Lex Luthor's gear here to browse dirty websites and jerk it in front of the guard if the guard won't leave. Like, it's your funeral, as he literally drops trow and starts going at it. Just makes him sound like an absolute pervert, or maybe prison did this to him. He's been in prison for a couple months now, maybe he's just been twisted that way. We will not judge, there will be no kink shaming here, but I do like the idea of all of Lex Luthor's employees just using all that advanced technology to browse dirty websites. What'll happen is my full episode 8 finale video will post next week after they release it. There are a couple other bonus videos that I'm working on. If you have any special requests or questions, just leave them in the comments below and I'll add them to my bonus videos. New York Comic Con also happening next week, so it'll be a bit of a trailer fest from DC, Marvel, everybody in general. What I'll probably do next is an episode 8 finale trailer video, just because there's a whole bunch of footage of Argus dealing with the pocket dimension with the help of Sidney Happerson and Lex Luthor's technology, some deeper foreshadowing about how it's going to influence the direction of the DC. James Gunn actually said that they'd be using some of this pocket dimension stuff to tease future DCU projects, but he didn't say what those would be. Everybody click here for that video. I'll update the link as soon as I post that, and click here for all my other Peacemaker episodes. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.